Welcome to today's session, part of SauceCon, Low Code Eats the World. I'm really excited to be hosting this session with y'all today. My name is Sar, rhymes with car. I'm product marketing manager here for Autonomic Sauce Labs. And we're going to be diving into this very conspicuous phrase that was popularized years ago by Mark Andreessen. He said that software is eating the world back in 2011. And we think that this is actually taking a new turn. Low-code software is eating the world. During this breakout session, we're going to discuss why Gartner Magic Quadrant for Enterprise Low-Code App Development Platforms predicts that by the year 2025, 65% of all app development will take place on low-code platforms. Today's enterprise applications have been designed to scale complex business tasks across multiple devices, departments, systems, and time zones. These systems provide unprecedented productivity gains for organizations, new opportunities for workers, and enhanced services for consumers. However, as the sophistication of these applications increase, so does the difficulty of building and maintaining them. During this conversation, we have an esteemed panel. Firstly, I'm joined by Dale Tucker, Chief Information Officer at Sioux College, who is responsible for providing the college-wide vision and leadership in the effective use of technology to achieve the college's strategic, academic, and administrative objectives. He leads a strong team of architects, analysts, programmers, and technicians, and he provides the direction for the definition and implementation of IT policies, governance, procedures, and best practices for college. Welcome, Dale.
Hey, Sar, thanks for having me.
So we're also joined by Sumit Saha. Sumit is a Chief Strategy Officer at ThinkPerfect, an IT services organization focused on delivering Oracle implementation, cloud strategy, and managed services. If you haven't watched already, Sumit joined one of our past webinars and provided a masterclass on the Oracle landscape and how companies are ensuring flawless executions of their releases using AI-powered test automation. Through Sumit's experience and years of work, he continues to strive in optimizing the approach to planning for implementation, managing risk during implementation, and enabling a sustainable footprint for clients to realize benefits. Welcome, Sumit.
Hey, thanks, Saha. Happy to be here.
Lastly, we are joined by Raj Raho, Chief Strategy Officer at Autonomic here at Sauce Labs, a tool that is democratizing test automation for low-code users. He's responsible for AIQ's product management, building industry solutions, and customer evangelism. Prior to founding Autonomic, Raj has held SVP and GM roles at CA Technologies, served as the global head of software quality at NTT Data, and has held product leadership roles at SAP, PeopleSoft, and Broadvision. Hey, Raj, welcome.
Thank you, Sar. Appreciate it. Also, nice to be on the panel with Dale and Sumit.
So kicking things off, Raj, you've been building low-code solutions for the past 5 years. What were some of the challenges and trends that you saw in the market that pushed you to start building?
So to answer the question, I got to go back to my days at CA Technologies. When I was responsible for building the DevOps product portfolio, we introduced this concept of continuous testing, continuous delivery, and continuous everything, all the way from continuous integration to continuous deployment, continuous testing, and so on. Despite all this, what we realized was testing was still a bottleneck. And there were some groups that were doing 100% manual testing, despite the fact that they had access to automation tools and so on. And then that's when we double clicked on that to understand why they keep doing manual testing. And you soon realized that none of these products we had designed had accounted for their skill set. There was a new group of testers emerging that were unaccounted for. These were business analysts, functional specialists, functional experts, subject matter experts, even administrators who were responsible for managing these applications. And nobody had designed a solution that would fit their needs. They're not coders, they're not professional testers. So they just did not know how to do the automation and achieve their goals. and they were actually struggling through their day job, and plus they're responsible for testing and validating and signing off on some critical releases, and they were taking a huge risk. The enterprise was taking a huge risk because none of their testing could be comprehensive, because they were only doing manual testing as much as they could in a given short time window. That was genesis of two key concepts. One was there is a group of citizen developers and citizen testers, and they need a low code solution. So when we brought Autonomic, we essentially tried to accomplish connecting the citizen testers to a low code solution.
Dale, tell me a little bit about the organization that you are leading. It sounds like you're leading a forward-thinking, agile organization. What is the utility that you get out of low-code tools as the CIO, namely the ones that we know of Oracle and Autonomic? And how were you doing testing before you started using these low-code platforms and low-code tools like Autonomic Sauce Labs?
Yeah, thanks, Sar. The piece of the puzzle that was always missing is, and I think Raj alluded to it a little bit, was that sort of capacity to be able to do that testing, either from a lack of knowledge or a lack of resource or time or effort. And certainly, I think the largest piece of the puzzle from a utility perspective is the ability that an autonomic gives us to do testing from different aspects. And I think that's what Raj was alluding to a little bit around the fact that we can have our developers who don't necessarily have the functional knowledge or the business side knowledge through some of the automation and the scripting that's available, do some pre-delivery testing, even before our business partners get to do their functional efforts. And then to even a greater capacity, our functional folks, and being a somewhat smaller institution, limited resources in our departments, and not just in our IT and technology areas, but even in some of our other areas, getting those resources, and Raj alluded to, off the corner of your desk to do testing. The challenge was that it didn't often happen, and so they would either pass it off as not necessary or whatever, only to find out later on that there were challenges that we could have rectified prior to launch or implementation. And so I think it brings that piece of the puzzle down to a degree for which can be managed at an availability that's reasonable for even someone that's got not a lot of resources financially or capacity wise, and so that makes a big difference. Historically, testing was, to my point, a bit limited in the sense that it wasn't done to the degree it should be, and it wasn't done as frequently as it should be. So dependent upon the type of implementation or change, maybe there was a greater degree or a lesser degree of testing that took place, all resulting in some form of challenge that could be faced at the end. Whereas with the implementation of Autonomic, it allowed for the improvements to that by adding so much more testing that the confidence in delivery and implementation grew. Again, it's never necessarily going to be 100%, but certainly brought us up to that level of probably 80 or 90%, that everything now that we're delivering will meet those standards, will meet those test qualifications that they need before we go into production, minimizing follow-on incidences or outages within our production environment, and providing a much greater level of value to the business at the end of the day. Certainly working with Think Perfect and their expertise, allowing us to build out hundreds and hundreds of scripts. We were never able to do that. Even if we knew what those scripts looked like, we didn't have the capacity to run through that. It would take longer for the testing than it would for the implementation or even the creation of the solutions that we were providing. So it's been certainly very helpful in that regard, and really changed the strategy of our testing abilities.
Sumit, as somebody that has been a OG, or as the kids like to say, original gangster in the space of implementation and working with the Oracle ecosystems, not only do you lead advisory and implementations for Oracle for your clientele, but a little birdie tells me that you're also an Oracle investor. Why do you believe so much in the Oracle ecosystem? And why is it a de facto recommendation when you are looking at scaling very complex ecosystems and products for your clients?
Well, I can answer the investor question first. 160% yield in last 3 years. Um, So now on a softer note, yeah, why do I believe in Oracle? A couple of reasons. I think the predominant reasons are Oracle always has been a predominant leader in this space for business applications, and couple of reasons why. One, they're flexible. Customers can tailor them, or the big no-no word these days is customers used to customize them, and these days we call it configuring. I mean, whatever lingo you use, it gives customers the ability to change what has been built for masses to tailor it to their needs, to their processes. So that's been one reason of my passion. Second reason is Oracle has been investing heavily, either through acquisition strategy or through market dominance by partnering with other applications, making the landscape easier. Even though Oracle was late, Oracle came out with its HCM and finance app. Fast forward from 2013 to today's release, Oracle increased its data centers, not just in North America, globally, going from 2 data centers to 39 data centers today. Um, Compared to some of the other competitors who haven't really invested in that degree of data center technology. It went from being an most expensive hardware company, and Dale can attest to it. I think he knows more about it than I do. Prefer- Um, he can get into a lot more detail how expensive Oracle hardware were, the Exadatas and those. Those were, even with $1 million, you couldn't buy an Exadata server fully racked up. Um, Today, you can buy a software as a service under $10 subscription running on an extra data center, automatically wired to multiple secondary backup servers, and you have a guarantee of 99.9% uptime. Also took the initiative to not only do that, also build in what they call the Oracle Autonomous Database, which provisioning, scaling up, sizing databases, adding table spaces, adding accessing in memory capability is all automated.
It sounds like Oracle has done a good job of scaling the costs and the complexity outside of adopting the tool. Now, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing when you're working with companies across higher ed, across healthcare, and across these very stable and tremendous economic drivers? What are some of the challenges that you're seeing when they're going to adopt these low code platforms and stuff? And how is Think Perfect helping them?
Higher ed is a family culture, how it operates. Um, so higher ed is not one of the organization which significantly increases its FTE counts, its full-time equivalent counts as rapidly as the private sector. It has processes. Their fundamental belief always has been in higher ed has been, uh, let's scale our team members up and see how do we maximize them. Let's give them more empowerment, more tools, and that's where low code platform comes in. The structure wasn't set up to support ground up development. So they needed tools, and that's where the low code platform comes in. They need tools where their developers can now participate in a business process without truly being trained for months and months and months on that business process by just using a low code process automation or a testing tool. So imagine the time it would require if a low code platform wouldn't exist for testing to not only code it from ground up, understand the process, to coding it, then testing that coding, then deploying it in production, and then keeping up with the business changes every time.
Just to add a little bit to it, was around the fact that the IT services that we provide are where the value is at. It's not in the work we do to deliver them, right? So the less work we can do in the delivery of that service, the better. And that's where some of these low code platforms come in and really make a huge difference in our ability to achieve more with less, I guess, at the end of the day, as a sort of a community of services that provide value to the business to achieve our real business goal, in our case right now, education, right? So
Very valid points. And Raj, coming back to the work that AIQ does and the work that you've done in the sector, what do you think people are missing, or what are some of the myths that people might have about low code in general?
From a From a buyer perspective, or a management perspective, I'll tell you, they desperately want this to work because for them, this gives them an extra risk protection. Because today, manual testing is everywhere, ubiquitous. Even in Fortune 50 companies I'm talking to right now, there is abundant manual testing, and that cannot scale, and that is a big risk factor for managers. On the practitioner end, they see this as an ally. This can help them expedite things, but they don't believe that this can do complex scenarios. They say, oh, no, 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 complex scenarios, it cannot automate. And they're very surprised when they see it can actually do complex scenarios. It can do end-to-end scenarios. It can do end-to-end regression. And some of our customers are using this to do the entire quote to cash process for the big business, including all the way from Salesforce to Workday. People are really surprised when they see that. That's the part they're missing, and it's our responsibility to put out more proof points and hear from people like Dale and Sumit, where people can say, really, this worked for Salt College. That's because they never. It's hard to believe, and when they hear the proof points, that becomes much more evident and clear.
I'm going to throw a little bit of a wrench. So this sounds all good and all, and it sounds like if this is a heaven sent tool. But what are some of the drawbacks? What are some of the limitations that we have with low code today that maybe AIQ, SOS, and our partners were trying to address in the future?
Maybe I can start with this. Sumit referred to some of the Oracle technologies. So low code, almost all low code products out there today are limited in what they can handle. They can only handle cloud applications, web SaaS cloud applications. If you happen to have, if you are an enterprise and you have Oracle EBS, which is the older version of Oracle with some client server technology, then none of the low code products can span across the Oracle EBS and Oracle cloud applications. By the way, every organization is moving to cloud and cloud applications, no doubt about that. But some of them still have legacy apps, and that is one limitation I see as even though it's a godsend, but it can't solve all problems. So when it comes to client server technology, it's a handicap for low code.
I would jump in there just to sort of back Raj up from a sort of a different angle, and that's, while I would agree that's a challenge with the tool, his comment regarding the move to the cloud and some of these more web-based and other applications of that sort is, it's certainly in my area, it's something that we're looking at. Again, I often refer to it as the bucket, the half of the bucket that nobody wants to see and nobody cares about, right? And so to get rid of that effort, within our resource portfolio allows us to do more with what we have and to offer more support in the solution and the understanding of the business need than it does in the actual delivery of the solution. And so even though it does have that sort of handicap, as Raj says, that's going to disappear, I think, at a greater rate than the value of the tool itself. And so certainly for us, that was a huge one. And again, we aren't cloud with Oracle right now, but we are in the process of heading in that direction. In fact, I think Perfect's going to be doing some work in that regard for us, and look forward to those outcomes. And that will just improve on our ability to use these tools. But I don't know that I would suggest there's really any downfall from it. There's still things that we can't do with it, even without it. But the amount of effort that it is taken away from our ability, and even beyond the effort, the confidence again in the delivery and what we're doing. And I would have to say that probably one of the greatest things for me with the implementation of Autonomic was the business realization of how beneficial it was. The fact that they came back after and said, wow, where has this been? Why haven't we been using it? Even after the pushback of we don't need something, we can do it, that sort of a integration piece. So yeah, I certainly, although I'm sure there's some disadvantages, there is definitely way more advantages that we've been able to experience. And again, in a smaller institution with, a limited capabilities and that sort of thing. And this is putting us on par with, I would suggest, some of the others that are choosing to do things manually that have way more resources. If I was to get questioned as a leader, I could place the value on this and show my leadership that what we're doing is much more efficient and valuable than what others with way more resources are doing. So certainly from that perspective, it's been beneficial.
So, Dale, you touched on some interesting points. You lead this cross-functional team of technology experts, business users. I'm sure you work with a lot of executives. Number one, what are some of those metrics that you point at to tie to the value that you're receiving from a low-code tool like Autonomic? And has your stance changed at all about low-code in the last little while?
Yeah, well, interestingly, and I'll touch on the sort of metrics at the end, but the sort of opinion or the sort of stance around low code tools and stuff has, I wouldn't say changed as much as the adoption of them, and as they've gotten better, the realization that, again, and I go back to the fact that the value that we need to provide to the business has gone away from the nuts and bolts, the screws, the servers, and all of that piece of the puzzle from that area, and more towards the what have you done for me today, and how is what you're doing as an IT service provider making what we do as a business provider that much better. And I can't remember if it was Sumit or Raj that we're no longer just someone they come to and ask for services. We participate in the goals at the end of the day from a strategic and a business vision perspective. So we're right there at the forefront. We're working with the partners. I kind of use the term that we become a utility now, right? We're just like water and power. You're not going to function without us anymore. And so bring us to the table and let us help you achieve your goals, as easy and as fruitful as possible. As far as the metrics, we're fairly new with the tool, and I can tell you that the simple metric is our ability to be agile and turn change around, or turn net new implementations around. We've just recently done a couple of pretty major changes to our Oracle platform, in leveraging the autonomic, and I can tell you from historical experience, we pulled those off in probably a fifth or less of the time than changes of a smaller capacity with less complication. The amount of testing that we do now is probably tripled versus what we would have done before. And sort of, we're not quite to that point of regression or start to finish testing, but we're pretty darn close. And I think with the help of Think Perfect, over the next 12 months, we're going to get to that point where it's almost testing just becomes something that happens versus something we have to do.
So the headline of this webinar is going to be triple your testing capabilities in a fifth of the time. That's basically what you said. Excellent.
Yeah, there you go.
And Sumit, to round us off, what do you see for low code space in the next 5 to 10 years?
I see quite a bit, but I'll keep it as brief as possible. I see a lot of AI usage. I see technologies there. I don't see vendors are embedding customer personalization of algorithms. Because I'll give you an example. Dale might use a business application for finance, for HR. HR behaves in a certain way. A payroll department behaves differently than a HR department. He needs to have algorithm that he needs to tailor so that the tests get coupled based on customer's requirement of algorithm than what the coupling customer decided to do at day one. Uh, because your requirements change. Second thing I see, a lot of analytics and reporting capability out of these tools. So to your point, Sahar, you're looking for metrics. To Dale's point, it's too early to measure those metrics, and probably a year from now he'll get it. But if the tool self-analyzes, self-reports, self-demonstrates analytics, then driving KPI, tracking KPI, reporting on it becomes kind of flawless. So I see a lot of improvement in that area. Third thing, Dale was, I think, softly alluding to the fact that the degree of testing has increased. So as much as degree of testing is increased, I see low code and testing platforms also getting, um, you know, certified by professional compliance organization to produce compliance certification that could be used by either business enablers or IT enablers to say, yeah, we did this update, everything is checked, this is certified, we're good to go. I don't know how to what extent. I'm not a huge deep technology person. I'm more a business process. I see there's pieces of blockchain that could be used. have certification associated to application by vendors where certified blocks could be accessed anytime in a distributed manner.
And that is probably part of a whole other conversation. I think you just opened up a whole can of, I don't want to swear, but we'll
But this
just
is what I
say
do on my
whoopee
pastime. I
here.
think about how to grow the space. That's good.
That's the next
That's
panel.
right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining the panel today. Low Code Eats the World. I learned a lot. We hope all of our guests learned a lot. We look forward to answering any questions or facilitating any comments that you might have. And join us next time. We'd love to have both Dale and Sumit back to continue this conversation. And who knows, maybe it'll be low code and blockchain eats the world. I'm sorry.
There you go.
Take care, everyone.